why did I need all this education if you're pulling me all the way over here? I was really mad at God for quite a while. But then the work now is this bridge, because we bring our spiritual selves into our academic pursuits, but we keep telling each other, cut the body off and just bring the head to work. Now, how is that working for us?
What if story is the answer to our crises of meaning and belonging, to our impulse to heal our lives and help others, to our desire and drive to leave this world better than we found it? Now, we love good stories. In fact, we're kind of obsessed, not just with the stories themselves, but with the stories behind the stories. Their oddly perfect timing, the healing process they provoke in their authors, and their capacity to catalyze individual and collective change. And we love exploring these with writers, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, healers, parents, and others. Tune in to hear these stories behind the stories and entertain with us the real possibility that whether you are a teller or a consumer, story is always offering or leading us to an answer. When Dr. Niki's path diverged from education as a result of a personal tragedy, she never would have guessed how everything she was forced to learn to heal her own body would end up helping her develop a model of mindful leadership that is now changing the lives of thousands of leaders and teachers and tens of thousands of students. Tune in to find out how Dr. Niki healed her nervous system after that personal tragedy blew it open and discovered the tools to help other intuitive empaths like myself, my clients, and so many other helping professionals. You'll learn how she uses mind-body practices to expose and uproot all of the unconscious ways that we undermine our efforts to help others learn, grow, and heal in education, in the messenger industry, and in almost every other sector. You'll find out how she combines her intuition and her intellect to stay true to intention in her life and business, even when she is directed to do things that make absolutely no sense. Grab a cup of something yummy and a journal to take notes, and come sip on some story and sanity with us. Welcome to Sips of Story and Sanity, where we talk about the stories behind the stories with authors, speakers, thought leaders, healers, and more. So my team, Aaron, my son.
Hello.
My sister, Alyssa.
Hi.
And clients turned friends, turned team members, Teddy.
Hey, y'all.
And Lori.
Hi, everyone.
They're all here to help me make sure that we get the most delicious sips of story and sanity out of this conversation, because it is going to be delicious. Today we have Dr. Niki Elliott, whose professional life is dedicated to improving conditions for students who struggle to live and learn in traditional settings. She moves mountains. Truly, I've watched her do this to help educators, parents, health professionals, and social service providers transform personal and systemic practices that perpetuate trauma and underperformance. In addition to providing professional development and personal empowerment through the Mindful Leaders Project, she serves as director of the Center for Neurodiversity, Learning, and Wellness, and as a clinical professor in the La Fetra College of Education at the University of Laverne, where she trains teachers to incorporate interpersonal neurobiology, breathwork, yoga, mind-body techniques, and healing-centered engagement. Welcome, Niki.
Hello, thank you for having me today, Amanda.
I'm so excited you're here. Obviously, we had to get you into the book. You Can't Make This Story Up, because you and I have been working together for 6 years now, I think, maybe 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
And man, everything that I've learned from you, I've just been like soaking it in and trying to embody it and trying to figure out how it all translates into the work that I've been doing while I've been learning and trying to support you as you get your work into the world. So I'm excited, but I really want to start at the beginning. Like, what was this? When was the first thought, I need to write a book? When did that happen for you?
Um, well, I cannot remember now. When I wrote when the first book was published, but I do believe I started writing it around 2010 or so. And I think it was a space in my life where I realized that I had a very unique journey in terms of coming to understand how holistic healing therapies could be supportive in helping people to recover a sense of well-being after trauma and life shocks. And I'm a pretty resourceful person. So when life throws something at me, I'm going to research and struggle and find and turn every single rock until I can get myself back onto a level ground. And, fortunately it has worked. I don't assume that I'll always have that grace. But when I think about what people most admire about me or look up to me most, is that they feel that when I share what I've been through, it accelerates their ability to move forward or to make decisions. And so I take that as a very serious spiritual gift, even, that people trust what comes from me and that they find guidance from it, and that it shortens and quickens their paths to getting to healing or to encouragement or to motivation for what they want to do. And so one day I really resisted, because I'm a very private person, to not tell my story and to go so deep into things. But I just got, what if even one person's life could be changed by your willingness to tell the story? And really what I got is, what if even one person prevents suicide? Or what if one person prevents irreversible child abuse and damage to a child's life, because you did not tell your story and give them the inspiration that they needed to see that they were not alone, and that there was a hope that was not being provided by other conventional means of communication and information sharing. And when faced with that, because I know I'm a minister at heart, I could not say no to that inner message.
All of those inner messages. I can't wait to hear about more of those, because the ones you get are just like, whoa. I mean, yeah. So you had this first book, and what was the name of the first one? It was Before I Met You.
The first book was The Intuitive Mother, and I wrote that to kind of share my experiences around what it took to come to trusting my own inner wisdom and my own sense of spirituality, whether that's God, Goddess, Holy Spirit, the divine. People have a lot of different names for calling that inner voice that guides us, that space where we get the knowing, that's where you knew that you knew that you knew beyond logic. That inner voice, that mother's intuition that we are trained by society to discount or dismiss or to perceive as irrational or too emotional. It was a journey of learning to trust that inner wisdom and that knowledge that I can connect spiritually with my children and with our family unit, and to know what was best for us, and to kind of quiet this cacophony of noise that we get from our society that constantly tells us to give every aspect of our knowingness over to some expert who knows our family and our children's needs better than we do. And so it was just a dive into that experience of what it took for me as a mom to begin to marry my intuitive knowing as a mom with my intellect, with opinions from outside experts, to craft what was going to be best and ideal for our family unit, and to really value that uniqueness, and then to encourage other women to try some aspect of that on for themselves as mothers.
Yeah. And did you share a lot of your personal stories in that book?
Oh, too many, every single day. So the book was a 21-day journey that will, help really transform how we do family life, to really give up this idea of the super mom, that our lives are just to be given over in, sacrificial submission to the family unit and every whim of society's idea of what a good woman is and what a proper mother does. And even when those things don't work for your family, we still have this tape in the back of our mind that somehow we failed at womanhood and motherhood if we haven't done it some conventional way. And so each day of the 21 journey, I'm sharing a different story of my bloopers, bleepers, blunders, failures, in motherhood, and how that inner voice turned my path and helped me listen to what my children needed, what my family needed, and to course correct from that inner space. And how my confidence in trusting that inner wisdom built as each time I listened to that voice, acted on it, something improved in my family life, something opened up for my children, some aspect of their true divine nature, something in what they needed educationally, which differed from who I am as an Ivy League educated person. When I stopped that story of your kids got to go to Harvard or they're going to fail at life, and like, no, I have a different kind of kid with a different kind of need. So when I follow that inner wisdom and connect with them at that level, something beautiful has opened up that allow them to express who they came to be on this planet. And I could have damaged them by continuing to push by what society told me I should be doing for my children as a college educated woman whose life is given to education. So I get 3 children who have different versions of special needs on the planet when I come into the planet as a straight A student with an Ivy League background. And so it's like God's best joke, right?
Well, if anyone was going to know how to help him, it was you, though.
I mean, but not always, because again, I mean, when you grow up a certain way, like school was super easy. You grow up as a straight A student, always being valued. That was my ticket out of the hood, right? Oh, I have to have straight A's to get a scholarship, to get to the life that I want, that'll let me, expand and experience something beyond this community, which I love. I mean, the hood in me put what's good in me. That's what I always say. But yet, and still, I knew that I was limited by the ceiling that was placed on what was available educationally in my community. And so I was told that a scholarship was my way out of that. And so everything I did was to perform to access education as a quote unquote escape route or a launching pad to more. And so to be rewarded for that, and then to be an educator, and then to be a teacher educator on top of it, like I train teachers. So there's all this pressure that your life is supposed to reflect the total benefits of education. And therefore your children should be straight A students, and your children should be on pathway to the schools that you attended, UCLA, Berkeley, Columbia University, and very different children than that. And they're brilliant in their own ways, but they fly in the face of everything that we say a typical straight A or cooperative student should be and do. So it was a big kick to my ego on every level to have my children supposedly be the poster children of what a parent like me should produce, right? And so if I'd have kept pushing along with that, I would have damaged their spirits. But from a spiritual perspective, I had to come to understand that our goal, both as parents and as educators, is to do what's possible to deliver a child into their adult life with their whole spirit intact. And that has to become more important than who we say they are and how we say that they're supposed to show up in the world, really as a reflection of us, which is a completely other issue, right? How our children represent us is a completely different issue than raising children to become the fullest expression of who they already are and what the divine has already baked inside of them as a seed.
Yeah. Hi,
So,
Shiva.
Hi, Shiva wants to be in the conversation.
She does. Shiva and I have quite the relationship.
Yes.
For those who are listening, it's Nikki's cat. She just came to say hi. If you hear a little screeching.
Yeah. So both of my books, both The Intuitive Mother and I Feel Your Pain, were just offerings, especially for college educated professional people who've been trained to see the world in this box and trained and rewarded for performing inside that box. What happens when your experience of reality does not line up with that? Who are you? How do you find your grounding? How do you exist within a society that keeps telling you what the norm and the ideal is supposed to be, when the only way that you're going to find peace is by accepting that there's reality beyond that, and you find the courage to step outside of that and to live it and to see the evidence of that bear fruit in your life. And so as a messenger, I'm called to offer myself as an example, a lived example, even though I'm a terribly private person. I mean, to the point of technology paranoia in some aspects of how much I preserve my privacy. I mean, there's no dead bodies in my backyard, but yet and still, I really cherish this idea of privacy.
Mhm.
And we were raised in a culture that says you keep your issues in your house. You don't ever let people know, what's going on in your house or in your life. And so being courageous in this way to share stories is difficult for me. It still is very difficult. And yet I still am compelled by the same spirit that tells me someone's going to open up in their life because of this. Somebody's child is going to be saved in their life because of your message. Somebody is not going to commit suicide because of your message. And I've received validation from strangers around the world who've read my book saying all of that is true.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
we show up and do the
absolutely.
work.
It did that for me. I mean, I remember when we met and we were in an women's entrepreneur group, kind of doing that thing that you're talking about, breaking the mold in a way of like, how do we be entrepreneurial and good moms and like try to do this in an integrated, healthy way. And I remember when you asked me for help with the second book, the I Feel Your Pain, um, I remember listening to you share about that and just thinking like, I like trying to stay focused on what you were saying, because it was like all of the light bulbs were going off in my world. Like all of the puzzle pieces were starting to fall into place of like, oh, this intuitive empath thing that explains so much. So would you share a little bit about the message of I Feel Your Pain? And because I really think that a lot of our listeners today are going to be much like all of the clients that I've worked with, like everyone here, intuitive empath, right? I mean, it's something that isn't talked about in our culture very much. And it's so important, especially in this industry.
Yeah. So, well, both books actually, The Intuitive Mother, but particularly I Feel Your Pain, were kind of born out of a traumatic life experience that I had. My first baby was stillborn. And as you can imagine, no mother expects to come home from the hospital without an infant. And you have the baby shower and the living room full of all the bassinets and the diapers and all the things and that wasn't going to be our experience. And at the time I was working on my PhD at UCLA in education policy. And as you can imagine, that was a nervous system shattering experience for me. And I did all the traditional grief counseling, all the traditional, licensed mental health provider, licensed everybody. And I was not recovering my capacity to function at the level that I was used to, neither academically, socially, anything. But one significant thing that emerged and started soon after that loss was that I began having an extreme experience of feeling other people's both physical and emotional pain in my body. And again, being raised in the Catholic Church and being educated in very academic, linear thinking institutions, I didn't have a framework for the types of metaphysical experiences that I started having of being able to feel when someone was sick, being able to feel my breast hurt and hear a message intuitively that somebody needed a mammogram, and then come to find out that person actually had the beginning stages of breast cancer, like over and over and over. So as you can imagine, that flew in the face of my idea of sanity and wellness. And it was a significant journey over many years for me to be introduced to the world of yoga. Kundalini yoga saved my life. I did not understand at the time what it was about it, but now that I understand the science, these 20 years later, I understand that the movement, the breath work, and the vocal intonations that are all embedded in that practice all help to repair my nervous system and bring my vagus nerve back online from that traumatic shock. I began to understand other energy healing modalities, mindfulness, and it was through those holistic pathways that I recovered the strength of my nervous system and my ability to go out in public again without being overwhelmed with all the sights, sounds, tastes, and intuitive messaging that I was receiving. And so, but again, I had to piecemeal that together for myself over years, really questioning my sanity, really begging for the intuitive knowing that someone was about to die, like, please make it go away. Why do I have to know this? But I think that years later, when it was 5 years ago, that my beloved granny passed away. And I remember spending so many years wishing to not know when people were sick or to not know when they were going to die. But I was driving home from the hair salon one day, and I had to go into LA to get my hair done, and I was coming back on the freeway. So I was passing my granny's exit, heading back out into Pasadena, and I heard, "Go check on your granny." And so I just looked at my watch and I was like, no, that's time Granny takes a nap, because she was like on clockwork. And I was like, I'll come back tomorrow. I'm already coming back tomorrow. And I heard, "Turn around, go check on your granny." Just as clear as you hear my voice right now, but I'm the only one in my car. And I feel a buzzing in my whole body. And I'm like, okay, that's that intuitive empathy coming. And I said, okay, I've learned enough by now. This was like 15 years in the game with this. Okay, I'm going to turn around and go check on my granny. And sure enough, I get off the freeway. I pull up in her driveway. I walk up to the front porch. My granny is in her wheelchair, sitting on the front porch, had had a stroke. And I looked at her, I said, "Granny, are you okay? I'm here." She goes, "Oh, you're my angel. I was trying to get to the phone to call you. I couldn't get to the phone. You heard?" I said, "I heard you, Granny. I'm here." And so in that moment, I'm helping her off the porch, and I hear, "It's time to say goodbye." And I'm like, okay, it's time to say goodbye. So I go and I get her and I pack up her bags. And I mean, I could feel it wasn't in that moment, but in the end, I'm like, how amazing is it that we have these capacities that we haven't explored in our science? I don't think these things are wrong. I think we don't have the science to measure it yet, right? But I was able to pack her up, call my parents, take her to the doctor. We got her examined, and she had 2 more weeks to live. But in those 2 weeks, how amazing was that I was able to know that in advance, prepare myself, prepare the family, and to have that time with her. But again, so many people that I've worked with that have read I Feel Your Pain have said similarly, I've begged for my intuitive knowing to go away. I've begged to not know when people are going to die. I've begged to not know that my partner is cheating on me. I've begged to, whatever are the things, why are we leaving these gifts of connection and these gifts of intuitive knowing on the table when so many people who we regard as geniuses in our culture have consistently told us over time historically that their inventions were given to them in a dream? Or, Einstein, or the woman who received the Nobel Prize for the DNA helix dreamt it. The person who invented the sewing machine dreamt being stabbed in a barrel by natives, and that's how he got the idea to put the needle in the sewing machine. Over and over and over, people have explained different intuitive and spiritual experiences that they then backed out with their scientific knowledge or their knowledge of the field they were in. We call it genius, but they attribute it to divine insight. And yet we still haven't, as a culture, reconciled that to allow the intuitive spiritual aspect of our being to live side by side with our intellectual and rational and knowledgeable selves, and to build a science that can build that bridge for that. And I have come across so many ministers who preach and lay hands on Sunday. People get healed and they go home and they are a sick puddle on the floor for the rest of the weekend. They cannot interact with their families because they don't understand how they have absorbed that intuitive energy. And nothing in the church teaches them how to manage and clear the field from what they have taken on. I have come across doctors and nurses and therapists who are on the verge of burnout and quitting because they actually feel energy leaving their bodies when they're working with patients who get better, but they are sicker. I've worked with lawyers, artists, so many people who recognize that their intuitive genius comes through, but they don't have that connection to reality. So they can create beautiful music, but they can't pay bills, how they say, chop wood and carry water. Why are we not, as a culture, talking more about how to bring these aspects together so that more people's genius can shine? And so through I Feel Your Pain, it was just an offering of saying, hey, I am someone that people respect as a grounded, intelligent, rational, highly educated person. I've done all the traditional things to prove that somebody thinks I'm intelligent and logical, and yet these unexplainable spiritual experiences have happened that have changed my life, that have brought healing to countless of other people's lives, and that have made many other similarly well-educated professionals not afraid to use those intuitive gifts within them in service to our greater humanity. And so I wrote that book with a lot of encouragement from you to tell more personal stories. And even in the 5 years since I wrote it, so much more of the science that explains what we are experiencing is emerging. And so I'm really excited for the next version of whatever comes out of that. But I have to say, I've spent a lot of time feeling afraid that if people in the school side see this book, there are many people who don't talk to me anymore because they found the book online and they read it. Oh, there's something wrong with this lady. I don't know if she is, all the way there. And I get it, because we're in a very polarized time where people seem like, they're talking about UFOs and they're talking about, all these polarized conversations. Who's logical, who's sane, and who's to be trusted? But I think where I sit with it is that I still get royalty checks every month from that book, both national and international, with zero marketing. And I continue to get emails from people after 5 years saying, your book helped me see myself, make sense of my experiences, have tools for managing it, and made me curious about how to develop it and use it in service of my genius. And so I'm okay with not having a traditional path to the New York Times bestseller list, but I feel like the book is doing what it's supposed to do. It has paid for itself, and it continues to pay me residuals. And it blesses the people who need that exact message, which I am clear at this point in time is a niche market.
Yeah, absolutely. And just that aspect of, when you're talking about the why are we leaving these gifts on the table? And I just, my spirit while you're talking is like, well, because when I used them when I was a kid, it was bad news, right? I would ask the question because I intuitively knew that something was wrong in the room, and that made people really unhappy. And, all of these little ways that we don't notice, even our children not having that squished yet, are being little messengers and conduits of information that we need, little embodiments of what we should be trying to get back to. And yet we're invalidating their feelings and their experiences and
their inner knowing, right? And I always tell people that, think about the holidays right now. So many people force their babies and their children into the laps of family members that they don't feel comfortable with. And we say, oh, you got to go sit with grandpa so-and-so. You got to go sit on auntie so-and-so's lap. And the baby, for whatever reason, doesn't feel comfortable, right? And so we break their boundary and go against the feeling of who feels safe and who feels comfortable, regardless of what we think. And we train people from a very young age that they don't have permission to set boundaries about who they want to be held by, touched by in any kind of way. And so
or even
we shut down
feelings,
that knowing, right?
To trust those feelings. Like I remember having, a few people in my family that I remember being very little and seeing whole pictures of who that person was and why I wanted to stay away. And they were images that my little mind couldn't tell you. I just knew danger. You know what I mean? Like I saw all these things and like, nope, stay away. So yeah, but it was go do that and invalidating all the time.
So we all have so many ways that our culture pushes us out of that intuitive body-based knowing and those intuitive alerts that we have inside of us about what we're really drawn to, what's really right for us, what is really wrong for us. And so for many people, this work that I offer is like a recovery of what was in them from before, And what I also tend to see is that many of the most intuitive and empathic people that I work with are also people who, like me, have had significant exposure to adversity, trauma, or adverse childhood experiences that really make the nervous system even more finely tuned. And somehow we perceive danger more acutely, but also we're more attuned to these other levels of intuitive perception that I don't have an answer to explain the exact mechanisms for it yet, but I consistently see it.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the work that I do, because when we partner with licensed mental health professionals in teaching this work and helping people explore, in my private practice, not, I don't handle any of this in my work with school districts, but then you're able to help people walk that line. Okay, is this a mental health issue that I need treatment for and possibly medication for? Or is this an enlightened, enhanced aspect of myself that I really need a safe community to delve deeper into and to explore and test? You know, and so I like living in that bridge, because yes, some people absolutely are schizophrenic or bipolar or whatever the diagnosis may be, and they need structured support, and exploring their other dimensions of self would totally not be the healthiest thing for them to do. And yet in other cases, yes, I'm grounded, I'm a clear grasp on reality, I understand who I am, where I am, what dimension I'm on, and still I'm getting messages that when I follow them lead to amazing insights and breakthroughs that change lives. And I want to go play with that. And I want to play with that in this safe community of people who can help reality check with me, you know, intuitive messaging check with me, and help bring me back to center when necessary. And I think I'm just excited that I've been invited and that I'm trusted by others to hold space for that kind of safe exploration of the self.
And again, it's an exploration, but it's also an exploration that's just so affirming, because it just made so many things make sense. And when I met you, I was 2 years into trying to figure out what story it was that kept undermining all of my everything. Like I would, you know, have this amazing crescendo in my business and like everything was magic. And then something would come in and take my knees out financially, with my health and all these things. But I knew enough that I could see that I kind of had some red flags. Like but I was still not really connected to my body and trusting. I was making up stories. Oh, that person, they weren't shoving me off their sales stage. I'm just not as good as them. Right. But my intuition was saying, no, you got robbed, and it was like, okay. But the one thing that like, I remember just making everything, it was the game changer for me, was when you explained about my intuitive, I forget, it was after our first session, and you were like, Amanda, do you hear voices? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And you're like, wow, because your auditory is like so high. But I would register it more as like a mental knowing. But what I realized when you were sharing this was because of all the trauma that was associated with me having to learn how to turn my auditory and my mental up to stay safe in my environment and to know what was going on before so that I could take care of myself, was that that's what made me so unbelievably good at what I was doing with people. Like I would see the entire, I would hear everything that they weren't saying. I would hear the little bits of a story that they left out, right? And then I would kind of feed that back to them. They'd be like, how did you know that? And then it would take us deeper into the work. But that had a shadow aspect to it, because I did not have the ability to manage it until I met you. Like I didn't know what was happening. And so what was happening was I was listening in, I was ear hustling on conversations that were not mine to ear hustle on. And it was creating a hot mess. Like I had people take advantage of me because they were threatened, because they knew that I knew what they were up to. And I had people attack me in all kinds of icky ways. And that's why I kept like pushing off the next big thing for myself, because I was like, what is this happening? And then you said that, and I was like, oh, that made it all make sense. Teach me how to manage this gift so that I can use it for good and not have it kick my butt later. So
it's really important. And that idea of boundaries is so significant. There's so many people who are empaths and tend to choose the helping professions more often than not. And this idea of, oh, I can feel your pain, therefore it's mine to fix. Oh, I heard that you need this, and therefore it's mine to do. But and tend to get hurt a lot, and tend to attract a lot of narcissistic people to be in their lives who love to take. But at the end of the day, a big part of it is, I feel this person's pain. Whose is it? What's mine to do about it? And that's the part we miss, is sometimes we are just happening to get tangled up in the web of feeling, seeing, perceiving other people's pains, but it's not always something that we're meant to do anything about. And that overreaching a lot of times is to fix our woundedness. If I overperform for you, overgive for you, solve your problems before you even name your problem, then you'll love me, you'll treat me well, you'll stay with me, you won't hurt me. But that's not helpful to the soul evolution of the other individuals. So I had to really learn every time I would hear an intuitive message, okay, well, am I supposed to do something about that? Or is that just something I heard? Or if I would, it's so interesting because Judith Orloff is a very reputable person who has similar faculties. And she's on the clinical professor track at the medical school at UCLA. She's a licensed psychiatrist. So it's been really great finding other people who are high in academia and highly regarded, who also openly profess to have these kinds of metaphysical and intuitive connected experiences. And so one day I went to go to a workshop for her, flew to Arizona, drove to Sedona to go and learn from this woman, like, how do I stop feeling people's pain? And I told her about the one situation where I felt the woman's breast cancer. I felt my breast hurt. So I went and talked to her about getting a mammogram. And that was when the pain left my body. And Judith Orloff screamed at me in front of like 500 people in a room, "Why were you so arrogant?" I was like, I'm just coming here to find out how to not feel people's pain. Like, why is this woman screaming at me in front of an audience? She blew my mind. She said, "Why do you think that woman wanted to know she had breast cancer?" So you see, she didn't question whether or not my read was right. She challenged me for why did I feel I needed to say something to the woman? Maybe that woman didn't want to know consciously that she had breast cancer. Maybe her soul had another plan. Maybe the breast cancer was supposed to take her out. Who knows? But why did you feel that just because you felt it or knew it, that you needed to be validated by telling it to her and having her go to the doctor and confirm that you were right about feeling that she had breast cancer? So that I was hurt in that moment because I'm like, why is this woman embarrassing me? But that was a critical lesson that I learned, is that everything we are perceiving or connecting with in others is not something we're supposed to do something about. And at each step, we're supposed to ask, what's mine to do? Sometimes if you feel someone, is broke and you feel that, you might even feel them telepathically telling it to you by the way they're talking or whatever. It doesn't mean you're supposed to offer them the rent. It might be you're supposed to offer them a business card to someone who can give them a job. And so in each step, it's like, okay, I perceive a person's pain. Why am I perceiving it? What am I to do about it? And how far am I to be involved? And sometimes the answer is give nothing but a prayer or give nothing but advice. And really being able to sit with the limits of where we're called to have influence in other people's spiritual journey is humbling, to stay in your lane and let people have their experiences.
Yeah, I feel like we need to just pause and let that sink in for all the listeners.
Because at the end of the day, you just want to be called the savior, and that's not okay. That's for you in the end. That's what you really want.
And it's such a part of, it's such a part of our culture. And it's such a part of this industry too, right? This call to go change the world and to go save people's lives. And it's all like beautiful, but when we don't realize the stuff that's going on under the surface, it's downright dangerous for us and for other people. My coaching has changed dramatically in the last 6 years, right, Teddy? You've been around the whole time. And even this year, she contacted me after a retreat and she was like, I don't know what you're doing differently, but that was weird. And really like the most powerful one I've ever been to. And you know what my inner conversation was during that whole time is, I don't think I'm supposed to do anything. I think I'm really just supposed to sit here and let them, like, it was a completely different way of being with and yet more effective. So like we have all of these things that we're being taught that this is what works.
Yeah.
But it doesn't in every situation.
I want to say, okay, I was a pastor, did a lot of coaching, spiritual coaching for years, and I had a way of being that. And I met Amanda and I learned there's powerful questions you can ask, and you don't have to have all the answers. And then I met Dr. Nikki, and I will never forget being in the room, and she said something about being a witness. And I had to get up from my chair and start pacing in the back because like it was so powerful. I grew up in a religious environment where we were told we needed to be a witness. You got to be a witness. You got to be a witness. Got to be a witness. And I hated that. I resisted it. And here I was, pastoring, and I hated that. I wouldn't use those words. It just bothered me. And when she said to witness it, this whole revelation that I am to witness, to be a witness to what God is trying to do in somebody's life, to just witness it, to be a witness to what their higher self is trying to do, to be a witness. And like, oh my gosh, this is my calling, is to witness it so that it can happen. Because without a witness, it might not happen. And I'm telling you, it was life-changing, that all I need to do is see it with my intuitive. When I read your book, I was reading it as a first reader and editor. I sat there and cried the whole time. I sat at the kitchen table and I never put the book down, and I read the whole thing through and wept because it was like all of a sudden my life made sense. And I had a son that was just a hermit because he couldn't cope with life. And after some sessions with Dr. Nick, I mean, my son is unbelievable now. It's just unbelievable. He had been a hermit so many years and would just cry. He wished he was a real boy. I just want to be a real boy. He could not cope, could not go into a store, could not be around dinner tables with a bunch of people. Just couldn't happen. It is so amazing what Dr. Nikki, just witnessing with him, just being a witness to what was going on in his life, totally set him free. To now he is very careful and cautious, and he knows how to. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Nikki. It's just amazing. But this power of being a witness. Yeah. I don't have to have the answers. I don't have to know what I just need to witness what's trying to happen in you and see the end for you. And it's very powerful, very powerful.
It absolutely is. Thank you. It's been an honor, over these years to have that connection with your family. And I remember when you told me your son finally was able to move out and get a roommate and get his own place and live independently. That idea of witnessing is because so many of us are trained to see ourselves as the quote unquote healer. If you're in the healing professions, or the savior, if you're on stage, you're the coach, you're the guru, but then you're taking on the responsibility for making something happen for somebody else's life. So that burden becomes your energetic overload, right? And it holds within it the seeds of judgment, that something's wrong with that person and you're the only one with the answer. So like, if I could break it down from a scientific perspective, which I didn't understand at the time that I wrote the book and developed the work, I now see how, whether it was the yoga, the breath work, the mindfulness, the energy work that I developed in the Inner Light method, from a healing perspective, unless and until the vagus nerve is stimulated, which is the nerve that downregulates our fight, flight, freeze response and brings us back into that space of social engagement. When we bond, when we're somebody's witness, we're doing several things. We're setting an energy of trust with them. So unless a person feels complete trust in your presence, they're not down regulating their vigilance that allows that part of the nervous system to activate, which starts its own spontaneous healing. So the vagus nerve is connected to all the internal organs of the body. And when we create a space of trust, when we say, I see you, I give you my total presence, I'm connected to you, I'm willing to hear your story, that boosts oxytocin, which usually is the hormone that we expect when a mother is nursing a baby. But they're showing now in research that oxytocin is released in the body when two people share and bond over a story. The heart rate, the brain waves, and the nervous systems of both the storyteller and the listener begin to synchronize. So when you hear someone's story of their pain and their suffering, and you just give them your total presence by holding that space, now your heart rate, your nervous system, but now if you as the witness have already done your work to be grounded and regulated through your meditation practice, your prayer practice, your mind-body practices, keep you grounded and settled. Keep your own trauma filters clear. Now, when that troubled, dysregulated person is sharing their story and they build trust because you're looking at them with unconditional love and acceptance and a complete spirit of non-judgment. And that's what mindfulness helps us do. It helps us regard the other with complete open heart, no judgment for who you are or what you've done, unconditional love and acceptance just as you are right now. You are worthy of my safety, of my trust, and of a heart that is judging you in no way. They feel that. So Stephen Porges in the polyvagal theory would call that neuroception. Their nervous system will unconsciously register that you're a safe person to unload their burden with. And that space you provide through your grounded presence, now they begin to co-regulate with that and attune to your heart rate, your brainwave, your sense of safety. Now down regulates their stress response, opens up a window of trust. And now dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, acetylcholine is boosting compassion, turning on that vagus nerve. Now, once their vagus nerve is activated to match yours, now the body can go into its own space of spontaneous healing. So it's who we're being that's providing the healing presence, not what we're doing. Which is why so many of now y'all wanted me to preach. We're going to church right now. That's why so many churches are spiritually dead. Because we say we believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God. We say the house of God is for all people, but Jesus healed because he accepted people that others rejected. And it wasn't that he did anything. The Bible said, if I just touch the hem of your garment, I'll be made whole. And even in Acts, when Christ was gone, the disciples continued the work of Christ. He said, these things that I do shall you do and more, meant that anyone who had that mind of unconditional love, of unconditional acceptance, of non-judgment was everything that the Christ taught. And when those disciples embodied that, the book of Acts says that people came and stood in Peter's shadow and were healed. Yes. Did not touch them, did not lay hands on them, just getting close enough in nervous system to nervous system proximity with someone who holds you with unconditional regard of love, of acceptance, of non-judgment. No matter what you've done, no matter who you are. And when someone can be held in that space, and now they co-regulate with you because you've done the work, that's why Jesus went on the mountaintop, separated himself, prayed, meditate, purify the spirit. Now the radiance that comes off your nervous system is received by people who feel the space, which is why every time I talk, people go, Nikki, when you speak, I get chills in my body. The hairs on my arms stand up. I feel things popping open in my spirit. My whole body just heats up. And this is whether I'm speaking secularly in a school district setting where I'm not talking about any of these aspects, right? Everybody wants to talk about separation of church and state. When I go into a public environment or I go into public schools, I don't bring my religion. No, you bring the sum total of everything you are and everything you believe. And the degree to which that really is about accepting and opening and loving all people is the degree to which you're going to be effective in any helping profession, whether that's teaching children, whether that's being a medical doctor in a hospital performing surgeries, a therapist, a social worker, a lawyer, anything that deals with the human condition. You are bringing the sum total of who you are, including your spiritual and religious beliefs, into how effective you are going to be able to serve and provide a healing ground for other people. And it's best done as a witness rather than somebody who's having a pity. That's why I'm like over it with all of the, so many social justice movements. We have to be careful because a lot of people think they're doing good, but they're really trying to alleviate their consciousness by working for those poor people. Anytime you want to go on any kind of mission, any type of community work, any type of social justice work, and you think you're fixing other people's lives with your high elevated stature, you are bringing judgment, you are bringing condemnation, you are bringing idea of your greater than-ness, and you can't help those people heal because you're judging their condition as wrong. I've been in South Africa in the poorest townships, seeing children that are far happier than kids in Beverly Hills in the United States, in what we would judge as horrible conditions. But they are filled with love, connection, and resonance that keeps them feeling joyful in each day of their lived experience while we're working to equalize the playing field as a culture. So again, whether you consider yourself a philanthropist, whatever, you cannot come at people like there's something fundamentally broken and wrong with their condition and that you're the one with the answers for it. Or you cannot make the heart-to-heart connections that make people trust you and open their heart to healing and transformation.
Well, I think that's it for today, folks.
Amen.
I think I got what I came for. I think we're ready to go.
All I can say is amen.
Yeah, it's huge work. I mean, every time I open up anything that I'm working on for you, I'm just like, this is the pathway to healing and integration on the planet, because it is everything that you just said. It's just
So that's why I was saying our churches are dead, right? Because we say we believe in the healing power of God, but then we bring people to church and condemn them for being gay. We condemn them for not turning their head this way and bowing down this many times. We condemn. We teach messages of shame and sin, and all of those energies contract a person's spirit. And then you want to dance and speak in tongues and call on the Holy Spirit and say that the healing power of God is there. No, because everything you've done in that environment creates spaces where people's spirits and energies are still in defense. Yep. So even from a nervous system perspective, we've got the way we train school. We say, oh, we're here for all people to learn, but then we have very rude and demeaning disciplinary strategies. We tell people on the first day of law school, look to your left, look to your right. By the end of the semester, half of you won't be here. We trigger people into survival mode in every area of our lives. And then we try to teach and wonder why they can't learn. Then we try to heal and wonder why they don't get better. Then we try to open spiritual services and wonder why people are not being set free from bondage. But everything we set up in our conditions trains people's nervous systems to be guarded and closed off to what they came for. So we build it up with one hand and we tear it down with the other. And none of the energy is matching what we try to say we're here for.
I literally, I have to share because I just had this experience last Sunday. So I've been the last few weeks to a month, like craving where I always felt that communal resonance was in worship, in church, not during the sermon, but that in worship music, because it just leveled everyone. It was like, okay, we all are harmonizing right now, finally. Mm-hmm. And so I'm walking up, and because of everything going on, they had a TV outside that reflected what was going on inside, and they had a preacher on stage getting very loud and yelling and like very intentional. And I walked up and I was like, whoop, nope, doesn't feel good anymore. Not what I was going for. And I just like chased me the other way. It was I listened for 2 minutes and it felt like an attack on my nervous system,
Yeah. So
it's the missing piece that so many different structures and so many different institutions in our culture are missing.
Yeah. And truthfully, Alyssa, to your point, if ministers, if teachers, if therapists were more connected to that intuitive voice within, they would be told in that moment how to modulate and adjust what they're delivering, how they're delivering it, which way to go, when to back up, when to bring it down, when to bring it up, how to move the energy of the space to really capture the majority of the people in that space. It's not a formula. That's why business formulas don't work. That's why teaching formulas don't work. That's why healing formulas don't work, because in every instant, we've got to adjust and modulate to the energy and to the dynamics. And you can only get that if you've got a fresh inflow of inner wisdom that connects you to that audience or to that individual, and that informs you when the things you've been taught are right on and when the things you taught need to be deviated from in order to create space for spirit to come in and move. But most people are so stuck. And that's why I think, again, with a lot of churches, as well as learning, I'm over it with these churches, with the PowerPoint presentation and the exactly timed thing. And you can only say what you already put on the PowerPoint because it's being televised and there's 3 more services coming right after you. And there's no room for the spirit to say, shut that down, go this way instead of that way. That praise and worship song is really bringing the spirit in right now. Make it go longer and cut something else off. But when everything is so tightly scripted and packed, there's no room for anything but what you already planned. And our plans are so dead and short of what is needed in that moment when people's lives and hearts need to be cracked open and transformed.
So how would you suggest for people who have been disconnected from their intuitive, channel or being, how would you suggest they start to get in touch with that again? like just baby steps?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question. So first of all, it takes a lot to really just have spiritual conversations within the self, because again, many people have been taught directly or indirectly or culturally or academically that that voice is wrong, that it is sinful, that it is incorrect, that it is a sign of mental illness, on and on and on and on and on. And so a big part of it is coming to peace with what you've been taught about inner knowing. Because again, I've worked with so many people that believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God. They believe the angel of the Lord spoke to Jacob, that, you know, on and on and on and on, that they were healed, or that, you know, that people received a message that told the three kings which way to go and not go. But then they don't believe that that dispensation of the Spirit is available now. And so I help people, particularly Bible believing Christians, unpack that for themselves. Why would that go away? You know, why would that be for some and not for others? And so once people can begin to reconcile, or academically, when did you have an intuition that was outside of your knowledge of your subject, that told you to look in another direction or to make a connection that didn't make sense? And that one little piece that you listened to made all the difference. So I help people unpack those times when that inner wisdom took them just one sidestep off the conventional path and led to a tremendous breakthrough. So we really start to look for those instances where, ooh, I was gonna go to that party, but something told me not to go, and somebody got shot there that night. So what did it feel like? Wouldn't you hear it? Was it a tug in your tummy? Was it a voice? Like, I helped them unpack how that situation unfolded. Did they hear it? Did they see it? Did they taste it? Did they feel it? Did a number pop up in their mind? Was it a song on the radio that had the exact words they were looking for in that moment? And then teach them to open their heart to be receptive to more of the similar thing. And then trust it with little things, right? Like, you're not going to trust the voice that says, sell your house and go buy that farmland in North Dakota, right? Not off the top, you're not going to. You're going to try the little things. Should I go to this place or that place? And oh, go to this coffee shop. And then you went to that coffee shop and you ended up making a connection with someone who had a book that you needed to read that had the answer that you were looking for, right? So we started with these little tiny inconsequential things, to where as you build that evidence, wow, I haven't been walked off a bridge by following these knowings. Then you can start trusting it for bigger and bigger things, like quit that job. Wait, but how am I gonna pay the mortgage next month? Quit that job. Boom. Job that pays twice as much comes right after you quit that job. Like, you've got to build that up, and it has to keep lining up with your logic.
Okay.
And the evidence that surrounds
so
that.
we have to, at this point, talk about how you've had to walk this in some incredibly uncomfortable ways as a messenger, because I have only been on your messenger journey with you for 6 years. And I have received phone calls like, Amanda, Spirit just told me I need to do this. What in the world? And then we watch it turn into something. So will you share a little bit of that? Because when you're talking about the war that goes on in the messenger industry, it's the war of the formula versus the war of what's right and good for me in this moment. Yeah. And that's everything with your story.
I mean, I would just say, like, you know, marketing formulas and, you know, build your social media to 5,000 followers and, you know, post the things that people want to hear. It's just not in me. And each time I post, I'm told, is your message for numbers and likes, or is your message for the person who needs to hear it today? And so, you know, I'm starting to notice after several years now, you know, a slight increase in the number of people who interact with the post or watch the things. But I intentionally have been trained that I'm under assignment from Spirit. I only post what I'm told to post and when I'm told to post. And I don't pay attention to the numbers. All I know is each day, if one person watches it or listens to it and their life is transformed by it, Spirit had me give that message to that one person, period. And the beautiful thing is, Spirit says, your income doesn't come from your social media posts. That's a business card. for somebody who wants to just know you and what's on your mind and what you care about to scroll through. But my revenues do not come from the numbers of people that follow me on social media. So someone who follows formulas might look at my social media and go, oh, she doesn't have a big enough following to pay attention to, but they have no idea that the contracts and the things that make my business work are people who find me because of the strength of my message and what I offer. That has nothing to do with that. Because spiritually, when you follow what's being told to you to do, that's authentic to you, everyone who needs to find you, every speaking engagement I do brings like 5 more speaking engagements, and you wouldn't even see that I even had the speaking engagement, or that 5 more people gave me 5 more audiences to be in front of by looking at my social media pages. So, and then the question becomes, if you follow the formulas, are you being walked into a path that you don't even enjoy? Delivering messages that you don't even enjoy because you're chasing numbers. You're not attracting the people who are meant to be drawn to you by what it is that you've been distinctly called to offer. And I get far more pleasure out of serving a niche than by chasing the accolades and approval of people that I don't even care about, or that really truly don't care about me. So as it stands, my social media platform is really people who've interacted with me at a keynote or a training, and they go, how do I stay in touch with you? How do I keep being inspired by you? And that's who builds the social media, or they tell a friend. But I refuse to participate in any inauthentic way of growing my audience or buying mail lists or adding numbers of people who are not the ideal people that the message is for. So every day I get up and say, Spirit, I am here to serve who's ready for this message at this time. Because you have to remember too, not everybody's ready for my message, but the people who are ready for it come and find it, and then their hearts are ready to be transformed. And how they say, we make 80% of our money off of 20% of the audience, and 80% of your problems come from people that are not even really connected to your message. So I'm all in for the 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really clear about that. And every day it's like, okay, offer this program, take that away. It's time to let that go. But I spent all this time building this program. You'll come back to it later.
That's what I want to hear.
It always circles back around.
That's what I think is really important for people to hear, is like, when are the times, because I know you've received direction that you've been like, yeah, that makes no sense. Like, so what are some of those? So what are some of those where, like, even it wasn't even like you were trying to follow someone else's formula, you were following the previous plan that was given to you, and then something changes, the direction changes?
Yeah, so I mean, just even with developing the energy work protocol in the Inner Light method, I just only wanted to individually teach people who are healers, there are people who call themselves healers and therapists, you know, and to support them on really creating that shift in how they do the work, so that they could be more energetically grounded in their bodies and work with people from a different perspective. But then the work turned into school district work. And I'm like, I can't be discussing this stuff in school districts. I can only stick with the science. But then it made a beautiful bridge once I learned the polyvagal theory, and I started understanding, oh, all these things we do in energy work are all mediated on the nervous system, which is the same things that are mediated through breath work, through secular mind-body practices. So now I can help people make this bridge, which I thought was going to be giving away all of the work that I had built in the energy work. It had a really clean translation. And so I'm able to serve. And again, I'm not sitting here preaching like you hear me talking now, you know, like directly spiritually in the public school setting, but still there are times when people who are very spiritual and religious come up to me privately and go, you just helped me reconcile how I treat LGBTQ plus students in my classroom, because my religion tells me that they are sinners, but in the classroom, I have to protect them from bullying and make sure they get a good education. Like, that is a war inside of me. So it's just always amazing to think, when you think you've created something and then you're being pulled from it and planted somewhere else, that it's not a waste. There's aspects of that have relevance, and there's appropriate times and places to bring forward all of what you've been given. I thought, okay, I've got all this expensive education, and then you pull me all the way into yoga, meditation, breath work, ministry. Why did I need all this education if you're pulling me all the way over here? I was really mad at God for quite a while. But then the work now is this bridge, because we bring our spiritual selves into our academic pursuits, but we keep telling each other, cut the body off and just bring the head to work. Now, how is that working for us? Higher rates of depression, anxiety, illness, disease, insomnia, disembodiment, right? So there's some kind of way, and I don't know all of how it's emerging, that we have to bring our whole spiritual self with our whole intellectual self, with our whole physical body. And it's only when all of that shows up to the party together that we really can be this embodied leader that's really going to help bring transformation to all of our human problems on this planet. Disembodied heads cannot solve the problems that we are facing.
Yeah.
So I've just had to keep going with the flow, because each time I listen, my income increases, my personal joy increases, my health increases, my relationships improve and expand. I have never suffered in the long term for following guidance to liquidate my retirement, to invest in the next level of the work, to sell my house, to move out of the community I want to be into, to leave a marriage that was not any longer the ideal fit for me. Like, every time I have acted on something that brought me pain in the short term, it led to a tremendous magnification and an exponential increase on the other side of it. I'm not saying it's fun. I'm not saying it's not painful. I'm not saying it's not lonely, but I'm saying that there has never been a time when I have acted on spiritual guidance where I have not borne the fruit of it in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just been amazing, because I've had the honor of hearing the in between, the like, I got this guidance, it doesn't make any sense, and I'm gonna do it. And then being able to see, like, the human is like, really invest that much? How in the world? And then remember that one time you called me and you're like, I don't know if we can do this one bit of this one course right now. And then you called me, and I remember where I was when you called me, and you were like, you're not going to believe this. Like, it was like you just received a contract from someone who.
Yes. So Amanda gave me a price to help me build a online course, and I didn't have the money for it. I'm just trying to make sure I can make payroll and take care of things. So I was like, I really would like to, Amanda. I'm not going to ask you to work. I don't believe in asking people to work for less than what they name as their price. Either I can afford the price and honor your professionalism, or I wait. I do not negotiate people's rates down. As an African American and as a woman, I understand what it is like to be devalued for exceptional labor and intelligence, and I refuse to do it to anybody. So when she told me her price, I could not meet that price. So I said, no, thank you. Literally, either that day or the next day, a school called me, and the contract that they offered me was the exact to the penny of what Amanda asked for as her price. So I said, okay, Spirit, I'll go to work this contract, pay Amanda her money, and we built the program.
I mean, you really can't make it up. You really can't. I've just seen it over and over with watching you on your journey. And it's one of the things that I love and admire and work my butt off to embody myself, of like being in that state of just like, okay, what is the next thing? And no matter how uncomfortable it is, or no matter how much sense it does not make,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Yeah. There's always that checks and balance, right? So, sometimes we get guidance that can be off. Sometimes it can be clouded by our fear. Sometimes that inner guidance can be clouded by our strong desire. Like, you just want something so bad.
Hold on. You sound like a Jedi master right now.
As evidence that you should have it, and you should not. You just want it too bad.
Wait a second. That is some Star Wars stuff right there.
It is. Star Wars is real.
I was gonna say though, it's comforting to hear that messages can be, like, for people who experience disconnection or interference or pollution from all of the different parts of our culture that provide that. Mm-hmm. It's comforting to hear that messages can be that clear,
Mm-hmm.
Really
it can be, but we have to make our hearts and our mind clear, which is why mind body practices help us clear that clutter, and reduce the inflammation in the body. So that's why a lot of the changes in the diet, things that are like anti-inflammatory diets, help you clear your nervous system channels so that there's less interference, right? When we do our trauma healing work, licensed therapist, with your spiritual teacher, or however you do your trauma healing work, that purifies the nervous system and cleans the channel so that we don't have faulty neuroception, perceiving danger where there is none, or missing danger where there is some. We can really sit in that silence. And when we purify our desires, right? So y'all wanted me to preach, so here we go. There's a scripture that people love to say, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Okay, I prayed, I paid my tithe. God, give me what I want. I delighted myself in the Lord. Now God, give me what I want. That's not how we should be interpreting it. If we delight ourselves in going into quiet time, prayer, meditation, connecting with the divine as we know it, whether your faith is Christian or not, when you connect with that and you create that open space, the desires you should desire are given to you. Then you could desire the things that are given to you to desire, which are always going to be good for you. It's always going to be exceedingly and abundantly above and beyond what we could have asked for or imagined for ourselves. Because our imaginations are out of what the world is saying. You should want that car. You should want that house. You should want that $1 million sale. You should only write a book if you're going to be a New York Times bestseller sitting up next to Brene Brown. And if it's not that, you shouldn't want it. So now we're wanting things that the world has told us would give us happiness, and it won't. Having that many people calling you and looking for you might blow your fuse. You might be the perfect person to be a niche author or a niche coach, charging a higher rate for a smaller number of clients, right? So if we sat back and says, what's best for me to desire? What's truly in alignment with who I am? What's truly in alignment with my energy levels? What's truly in alignment with where I am in my life and the other things I want to give time to? Some other version of a career would emerge that might have lower revenues, but much higher rate of joy and value and riches in your health, in the quality of your relationships and other areas, right? So, Amanda, I just have to tell this story. After I divorced, we owned our home in the Pasadena area. I loved my house and we sold the house. So I kept renting in Pasadena, waiting until I could buy a house on my own in Pasadena. Well, it's very expensive to live in Pasadena. And so, top of the pandemic, I was about to sign the new lease on my apartment, on my house, it wasn't an apartment. Now that rent I was paying was a mortgage of a very nice house somewhere else, just not in Pasadena. And Spirit was like, you're gonna keep just throwing away rent money, waiting to have a house in this particular area? I was like, because I desire to stay where I lived and raised my children, and I deserve to live here. I don't care that I got divorced. And all I kept hearing was, take your stake out of Pasadena, pick your flag up and pick it off the map of Pasadena. And I didn't want to. And so I was shown a house less than 5 minutes from where I work at the university. It's time to move. I do not want to live in Pomona. I want to stay in Pasadena. And I had a conversation with Amanda. I was like, Amanda, Spirit is telling me to not renew this lease, and to buy a house in Pomona and stop throwing away rent. And I do not want to live over here. I want to live in Pasadena. And Amanda says, well, what if you're going to meet your new husband in Pomona? And sure enough, I bought the house. My mortgage is less than the rent I was paying. And my new neighbor introduced me to the man I'm about to marry. I mean, you just
Just saying. Just saying.
Every time I think that we have the trailer clip for this episode, you top it off with another one.
I mean, it's something to it, to live in life under divine guidance. And it really requires stepping outside of the mainstream noise in almost every way. And to do it alone is very scary, but to find a community of people that are willing to do that together in their own way, to curate a community of people as a thought leader, and that's meaning turning people away from your own ideas. So you can't even be this kind of thought leader if you require group think inside of your community. Because even when you teach something, people are going to be guided to different interpretations of your teaching that they're going to spring off from. And the degree to which you demand adherence to the way you got it that's not the way everybody else is going to hear it, receive it, filter it through their trauma, their life story, their experiences, the way the spirit is calling them to show up. So to really be a thought leader is not to try to just build an audience of people who are never going to leave you. They're going to leave you after they've been fed by what you have to offer. Some other interpretation of it is going to spiral them off in some other direction to be a blessing in some other way. So it's just really purifying your intentions for being in the work. And I figure as long as I have enough, I have a beautiful home, I have a car, I'm moving toward retirement, you know, I have great experiences, I have enough to contribute and give philanthropy in the community where I care. Like, why do I need more than that to live off of other people's backs and pain? So I don't do the whole, I need X amount of revenue this year, and that's going to be my, you know, evidence of a successful year. But that's different from how many people are trained to think. If I can make the amount of money that I make now and I get to work less hours and have more time, then I'm good. Why am I going to work 7 days a week to hit $1 million in revenue if I can work less hours making by impact, right? So the Holy Spirit told me, your worth is not measured by the hour in terms of what my time is worth. Your worth is measured by the impact. So I don't work for the hour by the hour, I work by the impact. And sometimes we can have a huge impact on people in 5 minutes. So why you want to drag out your session and charge them for an hour?
Exactly. That is so true.
So it just is a different way of approaching it all, I guess.
I've spent dozens of hours with you in your events, and I still learn something every time you open your mouth to preach. And it's amazing. It's awesome.
Thank you. Well, I'm so excited for you because you get to embody this from the beginning, and I can't wait to see what a whole career lived this way is going to produce.
Getting basted in it, that's for sure.
Nikki,
it's always a good reminder to be back with you here too.
Yeah.
After the first session that he did a retreat with you online and was managing the tech, he had a really challenging client moment where the client came in and was just like all bent. You want to tell that story?
I don't know which one you're talking about because there's been too many moments like that.
Well, I'll tell it from my perspective. He like walks into my room and he's like so excited. And I'm like, what just happened? He goes, okay, all that stuff that I learned from Nikki yesterday. This client came in, totally dysregulated, bent, passive aggressive, mean, all the things. And you know what? I did this to boost the dopamine and I did this to boost the oxytocin. I did this. And by the end, I had everything I needed and they walked away with a smile on their face. And I was like, oh my goodness, this boy is like powerful and dangerous because he knows this. I was like, good thing he's good, right?
Well, that's exactly right. Because think of it, marketing, Aaron, you're brilliant. Marketing knows exactly, you know, the news knows exactly what they're doing when they yank our nervous system chain, right? They know how to boost your cortisol and adrenaline to make you feel afraid of your safety, how to make you feel unliked by not getting enough chasing likes on social media, how to make you not feel good enough to belong with all the marketing. If you don't have this, if you don't have Botox, if you don't have this, nobody's going to like you, nobody's going to want you. So they carefully cultivate altering our nervous system states and our neurotransmitter states to force us to make choices and behaviors and actions and decisions that benefit the financial capitalist structure, while making us think it was our own great idea to do those things or to react in those ways. And so he's just using it for the good.
Yep.
Same thing. How do I modulate dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins? How do I boost compassion, boost acetylcholine? How do I help tone their vagus nerve to bring them into a state of social engagement so that we can achieve our ends, right? So it's all the same thing. And that whole spiritual energy is sitting inside of all of that some kind of way. But the more grounded we are in our physical being, the more we can tap into it in ways that really bind us as a community and advance us as a civilization rather than continue tearing it down. Or even thought leaders who are predatory. Please, I've been in thought leader spaces where I have seen them use the dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin boost to make people spend money on things they can't afford. You should not be taking that person's mortgage payment for the advanced level of your seminar. You know you shouldn't.
Preach.
But you package and structured your delivery to boost their dopamine levels, to boost their serotonin, to make them feel good about themselves, to make them feel like this was the tribe and they belong. And now they got the warm, fuzzy feeling that in that moment, makes them, now we're gonna lock the doors now. You can't get out of the room if you don't sign up right now, because if you walk away, it's gonna be gone. So they're gonna appeal to that sense of urgency. That's gonna make you feel left out if you don't do it now. Please, all of it is designed to yank the nervous system chain of people we want to act in ways, whether it's your mama that you're trying to, manipulate to get the candy, or a person on stage, or a person in government, or a person in sales. I even had a person who worked for a bank. I'll let the bank remain nameless because we don't want to throw people under the bus. I did a presentation on this vagus nerve and the vagal tone, and we're helping people understand how to support children in schools. He came up to me after, he goes, I love everything you're teaching about this nervous system, but I have to tell you, I can't fund this work. He meant it jokingly. I said, why? He said, because I make my living triggering people's nervous systems and getting them to sign the dotted line on a contract before they have the chance to settle down. Do you understand that? Selling insurance policies. Lori, what are you going to do if you die tomorrow and you don't have $1 million insurance policy? What's going to happen to your family? What's going to happen to your children that are not even through college yet? How would you live with yourself? You're dead. How are you going to live with yourself if you died without them having that policy? Now your mind in that moment is triggered into fear. It's not good enough, not prepared, my family. Now he's got you to sign a dotted line on an insurance policy that's not even beneficial to you before you have even had a chance to calm down. He knows it, and he knows that what I'm teaching sets people free from that type of mental manipulation, and therefore he will not fund me teaching this work in school. And he told it to me to my face.
Amazing. It's amazing.
We do it to each other every day. Intimate relationships, in church, in school, in hospitals. We trigger people into fear, or a fear of a belonging, a fear of ostracization, in order to trigger their nervous systems to do what we want them to do. So are you going to be a person who lives in that? Or are you going to be a settled enough person who can step back from that and take a moment to decide if you're going to play at that level of consciousness?
Yeah. I just finished writing a blog about a story that I experienced in, I think it was 2013. It was right when I was stopping everything in my business, because I realized, like, I really don't want to end up like these people. Like, they're that predatory thing. Like, I felt that. I knew that I had been not just a victim of it, but that I had been trained by them. And I was like worried that it was going to sneak out, because I was clear that I was not healed yet. And so I was like, I'm just going to back up from this. And I went to an author's conference, and this gentleman sits down next to me, asks me what I do, and gives this really kind of icky smile when he heard. And I asked him what he did. And he said, I guarantee 6-figure days for people like you. And I was like, how do you do that? And he said, if people follow my script that I write for them, they will compel the room to pay for any program they offer. It will be a 6-figure day. It's predictable. And he gave me the names of all of his clients. And I was just like, oh, I gotta go. I can't excuse myself. But it's real. It's real. And I also think that there are a lot of people that I have seen over the years who, like I was saying, for me, that unconscious, the mimicry of like, oh, I want to be like this person, so I'm going to try the sales like they do. And we don't recognize that there's a reason why it feels icky, and we just push through like, oh, I'm just being I'm just afraid of success. I'm just afraid of failure. Like all those things that we tell ourselves. And it's like, no, actually, there's something kind of gross that you're mimicking. And it would be good to, and it all comes down to that nervous system piece. And it's such a revelation for me, and being able to see my world clearly.
It has made all the difference to look at things through that lens. And I think there's no more critical time than now, as our culture is being polarized. Vax, no vax, max, no mask, just to where people are so immediately triggered. There's teachers fighting in front of children in schools. I mean, parents fighting each other in parking lots. I mean, we are in a significant downregulation of our capacity to be well-behaved models for children in our culture. I mean, the hospitals are seeing more increase of people coming in from fights, and I mean, we really have to understand that we all need to be able to ground down and understand the energy that we're projecting, the energy that we're radiating, the energy that we are absorbing. And there's science names for all of this now. There's psychological contagion, right? So the people who are upset and anxious, and how do you show up in the world as a grounded co-regulator entering a space full of dysregulated adults? Forget talking about the children, the adults need a timeout right about now. And I think having a global understanding of our nervous systems and the mind-body tools and the energy healing tools, whether they are commonly known to people or many of the new technologies and therapies, neurofeedback, just so many things are available to us now, but people have such knee-jerk reactions to discrediting them or being trained that they're not valid or that it's sinful, or so many things that people are told that keep them from trying things that could really make a difference in well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being, and letting people take a launch pad into that intuitive realm where they're really able to tap into those higher mental and metaphysical faculties that allow us to bring our genius to the planet, which is what I'm interested in. Because I think the solutions for every problem we want to solve on this planet is in the heart and mind and spirit of a person who's just waiting to let that intuitive voice speak through and let them show something that the world hasn't seen yet.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I want to listen to you preach forever, but we have been here for a while now, so we'll just have to schedule more preaching for another time.
Okay.
I have all
I love
kinds
it.
of great notes from you. Thank you so much.
You did? Lori, tell me your best
Okay.
note. What did you write
My
down?
best
Your
note? Oh, hold on. Let me get back into it here.
Okay.
Probably the piece about that there's when that's been crushed, when your intuitiveness has been crushed, that it gives me hope. Oh, I'm gonna cry.
Mhm.
That can be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And that it doesn't have to be stepped on. And so what?
Mm-hmm.
Come back, heal, fix, repair, and move forward. And that there is a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And just switching that mindset,
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest aha for me. And then also the realization that when I used to go to church with my dad and have all those icky feelings, that wasn't just the angst that was going on between him and I,
Mm-hmm.
that was real. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still learning how to recognize some of those times because it has been so crushed in my world.
Right.
And so yes, thank you so much. I those of you that thought I was texting, I was actually taking notes. I have a whole
Did you catch
Me
the way
too.
that she did that though? That was a Jedi thing that she did when Aaron asked her about how do you get it back? Her answer was it didn't go anywhere. You just have to learn how to trust it again. It's still there. You're still getting signals. It's just a matter of learning how to trust them. That was some Jedi stuff right there, sister.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jedi stuff going on in here.
I just want to see people freed and turned back over to their own beingness, the truth and the authenticity of their own beingness. And for each and every one of us, including our children, especially our children with special needs, right? We keep ADHD, autism, dyslexia, you're not enough, therapy. There's genius alongside all the things we think are not normal about each and every one of us. And yet we spend more time trying to squash the things that society says is not normal, rather than giving that exact same energy to building up the things about us that are awesome and amazing and uniquely divine and waiting to be birthed as genius on the planet. And it's that intuitive wisdom that lets us access that. And then it gets modulated and filtered through our academic, logical, rational knowledge and whatever. But sometimes it tells us when to ignore it and when to transcend it, because there's limits to what we know. And I appreciate when people say, oh, trust the science. But we have to sit down and acknowledge that even our science is limited in many ways, particularly as it relates to examining and measuring these intuitive experiences. So we can't count them out because science hasn't shown, science can't study it the way that it needs to be studied yet, doesn't mean that it's not true. Just like gravity is real, even though we can't see it, if we jump, we're going to fall, right? So there's universal things that we need to explore and be willing to dive into. So Lori, what I just keep saying is, like, in my prayer, my meditation, I'm opening myself up to being introduced to the highest aspects of myself and my greatest human potential. I'm open to experiencing it and exploring it. And then I will say, okay, Holy Spirit, for extra measure of protection, if I'm wrong about what I thought I heard, please redirect me before I drive off a cliff, okay?
I love that.
I have no problem negotiating with the Holy Spirit.
I was sure you wanted me to go that way because
because we don't have a roadmap for this. We got to play with it and really make it light. It's not this heavy duty life or death thing. It is light. It is fun. It is curiosity. It is wonder. It is awe. It is child's play. And that's how we have to come at this. If you're not betting the farm on your intuitive decision, we need to treat it like curiosity, wonder, awe, and child's play.
When I first started exploring it, like I started paying attention to when I had these little thoughts, like in the grocery store, it was just a thought, you need to get milk. And then I thought, oh, I just bought 3 gallons on Monday and it's only Wednesday. I don't need milk. I get home, I walk in the door, the first thing the kids say is, did you get milk? They had had friends over and they'd gone through it all. And I started paying attention to that. Driving to work one day, you need to make sure you have your keys for work in your purse. And I thought, they're always in there. I never take them out. So I pulled over and I checked and I didn't have them. And I was only like a mile from home and I was able to go back and make it to work on time. Otherwise, there would have been 50 people standing outside waiting to go to work, waiting for me to open the door. Just started paying attention to those little things. And then I started adding things like, well, if I'm hearing something that's not right and I make the middle toe on my left foot hurt, like, and it started happening, like, because we do have these other thoughts that, and then my middle toe on my left foot would start. So I started playing games with it and it started opening back up, Lori, where you just, because I was taught not to trust myself. You had to listen to other people. And so it is, like Dr. Nikki said, it is something that just have fun with it, have play with it, and let it come back to life.
I love that.
And if you get a message that tells you to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's all right.
All I want to say, and if you do get a message that says bet the farm, then talk to your advisors and, get some validation and some checkpoints. And
it's funny that you're talking about that because in the last probably, I don't know, 6-8 months, I've been really trying to listen to that get the milk from the grocery store, or be sure and stop and see this person, or you need to text that person or whatever. I've been really trying to pay attention to those and seeing where that's coming back. But we are actually talking about
Find a farm.
the farm and not the farm, but the businesses. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that, but yeah. And we are talking to the advisors.
Yes, please talk to your advisors.
This is not financial advice, please not.
Yeah, we need to
your
disclaimer.
Please contact your mental health professional.
But just having that confirmation on the things that you said just have really touched my heart today. So I just thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I know that your time is precious and I want to make sure that you can get off to the next thing I'm sure is on your calendar. How can our audience connect with you if they want to learn more about your work?
Well, you can visit the website is mindful-leaders.org. And the majority of the work that I do at this time is mostly geared toward school districts and training child serving professionals how to embody their leadership through being mindful and using breath work and mind body practices at a secular aspect to support children. But also you can follow me on Instagram. I seem to like the Instagram platform best. Is I am _ Dr. Niki, DRNIKI, Nikki with only one K. And I love sharing Wellness Wednesdays and tips like that. And also on the Instagram page, I'll be posting when I'm offering workshops and things. Starting in 2022, there will be some shorter workshops on developing academic intuitions, is what we call it. So when people want to merge their intuition with their intellectual knowledge about their careers, choices, or any area where they're an expert. So we're going to really start working more carefully to blend this intellect and intuition and helping more people begin to really dial in, because I think that's really what we need at this time is more people, professionals and leaders trusting the intuitive knowing that they get and having it line up with their rational intellectual side. So if you follow me on Instagram, you will be able to know when those are coming up at the top of the new year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for today. Thank you for everything that you have brought into my life. There is no way that I would be as healthy and sane, if we can call it that, today.
Whoa. The podcast is called Insanity,
it's
right?
called
So that's kind of
Insanity
up
for a
for
reason.
interpretation.
But
well, it's a pleasure to know you, and you've blessed my life and my work. The written components of my work wouldn't be where they are without your genius too. So it's been a fabulous partnership, and I'm grateful for you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. So that's a wrap for today, everyone. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers for listening and watching this episode of Sips of Story Insanity. If you like what you heard, and I'm sure you did, consider subscribing, leaving us a review, and maybe even sharing your own "you can't make this story up" moment, or maybe something that popped up while you were listening to Dr. Niki talk about this intuitive, empathic experience. We love all of the comments and shares. You can also find out more details about our collaborative book that Dr. Niki shared her story in, "You Can't Make This Story Up: What If It's All Happening for Us," at truetointention.com. That's it for today. Bye.
Bye.